let's meet the team. This is an Agile team. They've been working together for quite some time. They are a cross-functional team, so they have business analysis people, they have developers, testers, even the guys from operations that putting this into production. And after some convincing, they have actually convinced the facility management team that they can actually move together and sit co-located. And as any Agile team, at the end of the sprint, they meet and do a retrospective. They collect ideas, what works, what doesn't work, things to improve. And it seems like most of the improvement ideas and the things that they get up, they are pointing in many different directions. And if they find something that they actually work on, they fix a problem, then it pops back up again, just like the whack-a-mole game. Have you tried that? They come up and you whack it down, and then it comes up back again. So stop collecting problems and start improving. Do you recognize this situation? Have you, when you do your retrospectives? Yeah? So I'm proposing something different. I'm supposed you're going to start with the Toyota Kara. But let's start with me. Who am I? I'm a Lean and Agile coach from Stockholm, Sweden, from the Adria group. Thank you. I'm a former .NET developer, working as a developer, system architect, team leader, and roles like that. But for the last few years, I've been more focused on how we do work. I've been working with Agile, Scrum, and XP for quite a few years, but lately I've been kind of bitten by the Lean bug. So I'm using Lean as a more holistic way of looking at how we can improve our way of working. I'm also working quite a bit with Kanban and the Kanban method, and I even made a small cartoon here, replaced it with my Lego figures. I was also part of the LESS conference in Stockholm, I think it's now almost 2 years ago, and we wrote a book where I talk about standard work in software development. I'm a passionate road cyclist, actually been out here on what you maybe can call a bicycle, but it was nice to go around and see the surroundings. I'm also very passionate about barbecue and gas grills. And there's a TV series in Sweden where a guy, he cooks lots of things all the time. And I'm happy to say I actually have the model bigger than him. But let's dive into the topic. And I really like this quote from Winston Churchill. To improve is to change, to be perfect is to change often. I think this really summarizes what Lean and Agile is really about. So if we look at doing improvement work with the traditional way of thinking, we maybe do a big pre-study, we do a gap analysis, and we analyze and we think quite a bit, and then we try to implement improvement, and then we are finished. The Lean way of doing improvement is, yes, we do quite a bit of thinking, of course, and we try to analyze. We are very fact-based, but the most important part is to do. So you think, and then you try to do. And based on what really happens when you do, you collect feedback and what happened, and then you change your way of thinking so you can do another try at doing the improvement. And this goes on forever. It never stops. You should really look at improvement as experiments. And you should expect, when you look at experiments, you should apply the scientific model, the scientific method. You will try to form a hypothesis of what you think the improvement would lead to, and what do you want to change. Then you make a prediction, and this is very important. You actually make a prediction, what you think will happen when you have run this experiment. Then you do the experiment, and just as before, this box is much bigger than the other ones. Doing the experiment is the important part. Then you make the observation what really happened. And based on what really happened, the delta between the prediction and the observation is really the learning. So just making observation, and based on the observation, maybe change your hypothesis, then it's very easy to kind of create the meaning after the fact, so to say. So we tried something else out and we got the result, and yes, that was the result we expected. But if you really do a prediction before, the delta between the prediction and the observation is your opportunity to learn. And that means you have an opportunity to learn even if it's better or worse than you expected. In both cases, you have an opportunity to learn. And you should really look at these experiments that 50% of the experiments you do, you should expect them not to give the result that you expected. And this is when you really learn. Because if you always get the results that you were expecting, you are really just late implementing your ideas. So what does continuously really mean in our context? When I went to a training at Volvo Cars, where they actually build the cars, they do these improvement works 3, 4, 5 times a day at the line. But in software development, our cycle is a little bit longer. So for me, I say we should do one experiment at least a week, and we should always have at least one experiment active all the time. And this is all teams in the whole organization at all time, and even on all levels. So that means that the software development teams, the management team, all the teams in the organization should have this approach of doing experiments all the time. So you should really look at your daily work as delivering the actual value, but also improving way of working. And how much part you do the improving the work compared to delivering value is of course different in every company, but I would say you should try at least something between 10 to 20% of your daily time should be spent working on improving the way of working. Is that how much time you spend on improving the way of working in your companies today? I see mostly shakes of the heads here. But this is really how the lean companies work with continuous improvement. That means that they do this work every day, and they also spend quite a bit of time of this every day. And this is how they can improve much, much faster than many of the other companies. So you should really see yourself as gardeners in your process. So you really need to keep it up and fix the garden all the time, because otherwise the weeds in your processes will actually grow back very, very fast. So if you don't do this work on a daily basis, your processes over time will actually be worse and worse. You can't set it in a good state once, and then it will stay for that forever. So let's do a simple experiment. Let's try to cross your arms if you're not doing it already. Doesn't feel that hard to do that, right? Can feel quite comfortable. You get a little bit warmer, nice and cozy. Now let's try to do it the other way around. It's a little bit harder, right? A little bit. But really it's the same muscles, it's the same arms, it's just a habit that we have to do it in one way most of the time. So we can really train ourselves to do it in a different way. If we do that every day, that will feel natural as well. So the idea here is we will try to get continuous improvement as a new habit, crossing our arms in a different way. So we just need to train ourselves to do this continuous improvement on a daily basis. So what we really need to do is to rewire our brains for continuous improvement. So what I'm going to talk about, the Toyota Kata, is a way of rewiring your brain to a continuous improvement mindset. And Toyota Kara comes from the book Toyota Kara, written by Mike Rodder. He's a professor at the University of Michigan. So he's been around observing many companies that are working with continuous improvement in a lean context, and especially Toyota. And he actually didn't want to name the book Toyota Kara, but the publisher thought that then the book will sell more. So, what is a Kara? Anybody know?
Practice.
A practice? And what's the purpose of the practice? Yes?
Fight with imaginary opponents.
Fight with an imaginary opponent. Maybe? Anybody else?
Go through a predefined set of movements.
Go through a predefined set of movements. And what is the purpose of that?
Aesthetics, I guess.
Aesthetics, become better. And it comes from, I think, because I am not doing martial arts myself, but it comes from the martial arts, where you have a preset movements that you do over and over again, kind of creating the muscle memory of doing these movements. And the purpose of this is so you don't have to focus on doing the movements, all of them, but you can focus on improving one small detail of this kara. So whenever you start with karate, which I don't do, in the beginning you start to do these karas. But even when you have a black belt, you go back and do these karas over and over again. And you try to strive for perfection. So even when you have done karate for more or less all your life, you still can improve it a little bit. And this is what Toyota Kara is about. It's about creating muscle memory for continuous improvements. Something that is safe, everybody knows how to do it, and you can do it over and over again in striving for perfection. So I like this quote from Aristotle: "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act but an habit." So we wanted to create the habits of continuous improvements, a culture of kaizen, continuous improvements. And Toyota Kara talks about putting forth a vision, a nirvana, something to strive for, and it's really something that is far, far out. It's not like 1 or 2 years out, it's more like a lifetime or two out. And it's a vision about how you should operate your processes. But to get to this vision, you really need to understand how things work today. So you really need to understand your current condition, and then you kind of aim from the current condition towards your vision, and you set up a challenge that might be 1 to 3, maybe 5 years out. Toyota has these kind of challenges, and they set them 5 to 10 years out. And then between the current condition and the challenge, you set something that is called target conditions. And target conditions is something that is maybe a month or the longest 3 months out. And this is how your process should operate at that point. So if we would compare this to something else, let's imagine that we are in the United States, and I think it's in the beginning of the 1960s. We had a vision. We should boldly go where no one has gone before. We want to explore space. And the current condition is that we have rockets. We can get them up in the air and maybe even out into space. But the challenge is we want to go to the moon and back. That means that we don't really know how to do it, but we really want to do it. We want to go there. So we set up target conditions. We need a rocket that can go out of orbit, has to go around Earth. We need to have a rocket that can carry people, and so forth. We set small target conditions moving towards our challenge. And as we hit the challenge, we set a new challenge that is closer to our vision. Make sense? Apollo 11, yeah.
Not one.
We have,
It wasn't Apollo 1, it was Apollo 11.
exactly, so we had many different target conditions here. And then the question is, Apollo 13, what happened with that one? Yeah. Yeah. So, Toyota kata contains of two major katas. There's, when you go into details, you can see a little bit more, but the major ones are the improvement kata and the coaching kata. And we will start diving into the improvement kata. And the improvement kata has four major steps. It says, first, understand the direction. That is kind of having the vision, having the challenge. So we really need to understand where we're supposed to go. Because if we don't know where we're going, how do we know if we are actually getting closer or not? Getting back to Goiko's talk this morning. So this is kind of setting the destination for a GPS. And the next part is to grasp your current condition. How are things working right now? That is the GPS position, so to say. And then the next thing is to set a target condition. What is the next turn that we want to take on the GPS? And then finally, we will start running through what is called the plan, do, check, act cycle, which is the experimental part. We take small steps and see how we get along. And that's kind of when we drive with the GPS on. Whenever we move, the GPS kind of compensates to where we are. So let's dive in. Understanding direction. Understanding the direction is very, very important. You need to kind of formulate a vision, and the vision should be based on how you want your processes to operate when you arrive. So if you're familiar with the 7 habits of highly effective people, I think it's habit 2, when he talks about begin with the end in mind. So you should try to describe for yourself how would your process operate when you arrive to the destination. And this is really about understanding your direction. And it should be process focused, so it's not really a business vision or kind of being the best company in the world or anything like that. It is how your processes should operate, so it will generate that outcome. And it's not outcome focused, it's focused on how you do things. And based on how you do things, you will get the result. Hopefully the result you are hoping for. And if we look at an example, this is Toyota's vision for how they operate their kind of assembly and production processes. And they have these, this is their vision. 0 defects. Anyone here owns a Toyota car? Any defects in your Toyota car? No? Yeah, 0 doesn't exist, right? I've heard people that own Toyota cars and they say, well, they're good, but they're not perfect. So it's something to strive for. 100% value added. That means that all the things that you do in your process when you assemble the car should add value to the customer. That means if you have the assembly line here and you have your raw material here, the movement from here to here is a non-value added work. So for Toyota, they see that short movement as non-value added. So if they can remove that, that is an improvement. So the 100% value added is of course something that is extremely hard and extremely expensive to strive for, but it's something that they strive for. Also, one piece flow in sequence on demand. That means that they will try to build one car at a time in the sequence that the customer asks for them, and only when the customer asks for them. And of course this is also extremely expensive. If you need one piece of sheet metal, they don't order that amount of ore from the mine. They order those in batches. But they are striving towards being able to do it one piece at a time. And of course, because this is a process with big machineries and things like that, they're saying they want security for people. They're very good at this. They don't have that many accidents, much better than the rest in the industry, but they still have them and they strive to remove them as much as possible. Yes?
I don't know if we're allowed to ask questions, but...
Please.
Okay. One piece flow in sequence on demand I think is great when you're repeating the same action over and over again, trying to reduce variance. But in software it seems that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to do one thing once and then we do the next thing once and then the next thing once.
Yeah.
So have you any thoughts on that?
Yep. So your question was for the camera and for the rest of the audience. So the one-piece flow in sequence on demand might be applicable for something that you repeat over and over. How does that apply to software? Well, you have to put these kind of things into your own context. So maybe a vision could be something like this, but this is something that you need to develop yourself. So 0 defects in production, maybe. So I would say maybe you don't want to put technical defects out into the field if possible. Doing the wrong thing is not the same as defects, I think. But putting technical issues out in production might be a problem. 100% value added. This is of course extremely hard as well, but maybe it's something to strive for, maybe. And then connected to your question, highest value first on demand, instead of saying one piece. So we want to deliver what is the highest value for the customer at a single point in time. So maybe that's not one single piece flow. But these visions is something that you really need to develop yourself based on your context, on how you operate. But it should be based on how you want to operate your processes. And some processes you want to have high variability, and some processes you want to have low variability. So it depends on your own context. Yes, one more. Stepping back.
Yeah. Why did you remove the security part of this?
So why did I remove security from this one? Well, maybe you shouldn't. You get kind of problem with your arms when you use the mouse, when the computer and things like that. But and maybe your eyes. Yes, you can absolutely keep it. But I don't see that many fingers getting chopped off and big injuries like that. So, but of course you can keep it.
I was thinking in the other direction when you were saying before basically that you should run experiment basically, and you should allow basically people to do the experiment, which is to think and stimulate the continuous improvement. And security means, I would put this basically means that you are safe to fail basically.
Okay. Yeah. So the security for people here is kind of the physical security, but you are talking about security in terms of being able to fail or not. I don't use the kind of the word failure, because I think when you run an experiment, you will get the result you expected or you not expected. So it's not really a failure, because failure tend to have a very negative connotation. But experiments should be that you could run them and they either give you the result you expected or you create a new learning. But of course you can have security for people here. So, moving on. Please interrupt me, but it might be that we don't have time for the final kind of walkthrough of an example, but that's fine with me. Grasping the current condition. This is very important, and in most cases, if you kind of go into a factory, it's quite easy to understand how things work. I didn't have that picture in there, but in our time, the work that we do, most of the work is hidden in the computers. So if you step into a factory floor, you can actually, just by standing there and maybe implement the Taiichi Ohno circle, standing in one place, observing how the process operates, you can see things and you can see how things move through the process. If you would do the Ohno circle in your company, you go into the developer's room and you stand there watching. If you don't see their screens, you don't know if they're actually surfing the web or doing value created work. I don't say that surfing the web might not be adding value to the system, but you can't really see what happens. So you need to create an understanding. And some way of doing that might be to have things like a Kanban board that helps you to understand who's working with what and so forth. So you need to kind of visualize your work, and you need to try to understand how things work. And this means also you can't be a manager in an office just looking at Jira or some other tool. You really need to go to where the work is done and see what really happens. Because otherwise you don't really understand how things work. And if you look at most companies, let's say in manufacturing, the managers tend to be on the shop floor at least 25% of the time, if there's a lean company. So what could we collect? Collect data and facts, not gut feeling. If you need to collect gut feeling for some reason, because this is a good metric for something, then collect them as metrics. And what I mean there is, if you want to kind of gauge how happy people are, maybe ask on a very regular basis on a kind of sad, glad scale, and collect that metrics. So you have the facts, how people actually feel. It should be process metrics, so you should try to see how the process works. That might be cycle time, lead time, the amount of work that you have in the process, the amount of failure demand, things that are not part of the value creating process, and things like that. And also, of course, how the outcome metrics. Are we giving the results to the business that we are expecting to do? And this could be extremely hard, but it's important to kind of understand that as well. So the next thing is to kind of create a target condition. So we know where we are, we have a goal somewhere over there that we want to achieve, and we need to set a target condition. So how do we set a target condition? Well, it should be just beyond your knowledge threshold, kind of beyond the horizon. This is something you don't really know how to do it, but it shouldn't be impossible, feel like it's impossible. So it should be, you should kind of follow the Goldilocks rule. We'll come into that. But it should be just outside of what you think that you can achieve. It should feel kind of like putting a square peg in a round hole. Because you should challenge yourself to try something new, something different. Run an experiment. Coming back to the 50% of not giving the result you expected. So it should be an hypothesis on the journey towards your target, your next challenge ambition. That means it should be something that you think will bring you closer to it, but it doesn't have to do it. This is a case where you try to learn how your process operates. It should be based on your business strategy and model for how you do business improvement. And what I mean with this is, if you think lean and agile is your business strategy, having big batches of work might not be the next thing that you want to try. So it should be based on your philosophy and kind of your model of how you think you should improve your business. And then follow the Goldilocks rule. So in Swedish we have this word lagom, which means it's not too hard, it's not too easy, it's just right. And you know the story about Goldilocks and the three bears? So it is the same thing here. The bed is not too large, it's not too small, it's just right. And of course that is extremely hard, and you have to practice about this over time. So we have our challenge, we have our current condition, and we might set up our target condition. And of course this is not how it works, because we can't kind of plot out the perfect target conditions between now and towards the challenge. It's more like this. You have a challenge you want to strive for, and you have your current condition, and then you take small steps into the unknown, and based on what happens, on what you observe, you take another step. So you're really probing yourself through this unknown territory, and hopefully you will reach the challenge So either you reach what you put the challenge up at that date, or the date expires for the challenge and you might set a new one. So some examples. Make old work visible, because in most cases, in our type of work, we don't see the work that we're actually working with. So making it visible might be a first good step. Lead time, you set lead time to a specific number of days. So maybe in this case you want to reduce it from 80 days to 40 days. And this is based on your business strategy. So your business strategy says that you want to have short lead time. Then you set a specific target where you want to move towards. And because you set these specific targets, you need to solve the problems that is stopping you from reaching that target condition. Maybe also setting the working process to 15 compared to 20 today. So we set very specific numbers here. We don't use a percentage or something like that, because we need to know if we reach the target condition or not. So it should be measurable. Deploy to production every 2 weeks, and maybe use specification by example on 80% of the features. So this one is percentage, so I need to change that maybe. But these are examples. And then the question comes, how do you set this? Who is kind of defining them? So it's not kind of an arbitrary setting whatever target condition that you want. It should really be based on where you want to go, and based on the business model that you have. So if you are using Lean and Agile as your business model, and you want to improve lead time, for instance, if you want to make that shorter, then setting a target condition that is in that direction is the kind of target condition you would set. And the next step is to take small PDCA cycles from where you are today towards the target condition. And this is also making small experiments from where we are today towards the target condition. And the target condition then is set to a specific date and a specific how that process should operate at that date. Either we reach it at that time or it expires and we set a new one. And also, just like before, going from the current condition to the target condition, these experiments, it's not a straight line. It's more like this. And we're taking small steps into the unknown, and some might be totally wrong, and we need to restart and go through this unknown again. And some say, well, if you do an experiment and you step into the unknown, you have changed the system, so you can't really step back, but I guess you get the point here. And then you take these small steps over time towards the target condition. So that was the improvement kata. And to support this work, and especially the last part, doing these PDCA cycles, we have the coaching kata. And the coaching kata is the leaders in the organization. And if you apply Scrum, I would say the Scrum Master would be kind of the leader that is driving this kind of work. If you're using Kanban or whatever, it might be your line manager, whoever the leader is that is kind of providing the support and help for how you do work. And it should feel like, as a leader, it should kind of help you on the way. And it should also be kind of pushing you in the right direction. So it should not be something that you tell people what to do, but you set the how and why. No, sorry, the why and what, and then the team that you work with would do the how. So the leader should be more asking questions and helping out with things that they need help to, but also kind of giving you direction. Is the experiment that you're trying right now, is it in the right direction or not? So to do this, we have this kata card, the coaching kata cards, about 5 questions. So as a coach, you go through these questions and you use them over and over, because this creates the security for the people that is is working in the process. They know what to expect, and we go through it deliberately. And we start with the question one, what is the target condition? And that means that we revisit the why all the time. And in the beginning, you will see that whenever you go through it the second time, 1 week later or 2 days later, well, we didn't really set that target condition that very clearly, and you need to kind of refine it. The second question is, what's the actual condition now? And that means that you should understand how your process operates today. That means that you need to collect data all the time, and as you evolve, as you do these improvements, you need to collect the data on a daily basis and have that available as you go. If we had done an experiment previously, we go through the questions on the back. What was your last step? And then you, as a learner, you explain what was your last step, and you also go through what did you expect would happen from running that step. And then we ask the question, what actually happened? And now we have kind of the prediction and the observation, and we have the last question here, what did you learn? The delta between the two. So it's very focused on learning on how to improve your processes and to understand how things work. And when we have gone through this, we go back to step number 3. What are the obstacles you think are preventing you from reaching the target condition? And we are only focusing on the things that we think are preventing us from going from the current condition to the target condition. There might be a ton of different problems that we want to address, but we are not addressing them right now. We are only focusing on the problems that are preventing us from getting to the target condition. When we reach the target condition, we might set a different target condition that would address the other problems. And then we work on which one are you addressing now. So we select only one problem at a time to work on. Question number 4, what is your next step? What is the next experiment that you want to run? So the learner is expected to have an experiment ready to go when you go through this kata. And also to describe what do you expect. We come to the last question, and probably the most important. When can we go and see what we have learned from taking that step? That means that we set a date and we set a place. And we actually go to the work is done, and we try to observe the changes in the process if possible, and we see what we have actually learned from taking this step. So you see, we come back to learning over and over again. So a client I work with, they have kind of a part of their mission statement. It says, we want to outlearn the competition. And this is what it's really about. So how are we on time? I guess we have 5 more minutes according to the schedule. So I will skip through this example and we will get to questions. So I will skip through it very quickly here. All these slides are online, so you can actually go through them yourself. And the recording might be, well, the recording here will not have this information, but there's other recordings. So let's see. And the forms that you see here, you don't need to use these forms, but they're quite useful because they have kind of all the steps that you need. So here we go. So, summary. Toyota Kata is about creating a muscle memory of continuous improvement in your company. And by creating this muscle memory, we can start to focus on the details when we do this. And we can start to strive towards perfection, even how we do the improvement work. And of course, the work we do will be different more or less every time that we run through it. So every experiment will be unique, but it will be a structured way of doing the improvement work. And the improvements should be treated as experiments and try to use the scientific method where you make a prediction, you do the experiment, and you observe, and the delta would be your learning. Familiar routines as you probe through the unknown. And this is really about security. So if you come back to this over and over again, it feels secure. You don't feel like you are kind of stumbling in the dark. You might be that when you do the actual experiments, but at least the katas, the Toyota kata, will be something that is always there as you do this. Be like a safety rail on a boat on a high sea. You can have your hand on that as you walk around on the boat. So are the exact katas important as I have described them here? Yes, they are important, and they are worded in a very certain way to create kind of the learning that we want. But it's more important to have have routines. So you have something that you can repeat over and over again to create this safety. So if you need to create your own routines, create your own katas, that's fine. But this could be a very good starting point. So Toyota kata may work for building cars, but we develop software. This is a very common question I get. And this has actually been applied in many different contexts. Moving things from one location to another, software development that I'm working with it, and so it's been used in many different contexts. Something similar is used by a company called Southwest Airlines, if I understand it correctly, and they are operating an airline. So this is more of on a meta level. It doesn't have to do with manufacturing. It's how you can improve your processes. And this team, when they tried it, they thought Toyota kata rocks. And I hope if you try it, you will feel the same. And if you want to find out more, here are some links. You have my blog on top, and you have Mike Rodder's homepage, and a little bit more. And the slides for this talk will be available on my SlideShare. So if you Google for Håkan Forss and Toyota kata and stop doing retrospectives, you will find this. There's a few up there already. And with that, I will say thank you and take questions if we have time. Any questions? I have provided all the answers. And yes, I built all these models myself. Thank you.
Great.
I'm a lean and agile coach from Stockholm, Sweden, from the Adria group. Thank you. I'm a former .NET developer, working as a developer, system architect, team leader, and roles like that. But for the last few years, I've been more focused on how we do work. I've been working with Agile, Scrum, and XP for quite a few years, but lately I've been kind of bitten by the lean bug. So I'm using lean as a more holistic way of looking at how we can improve our way of working. I'm also working quite a bit with Kanban and the Kanban method, and I even made a small cartoon here, replaced it with my Lego figures. I was also part of the LESS conference in Stockholm. I think it's now almost So let's start. Let's meet the team. This is an Agile team. They've been working together for quite some time. They are a cross-functional team. So they have business analysis people, they have developers, testers, even the guys from operations that putting this into production. And after some convincing, they have actually convinced the facility management team that they can actually move together and sit co-located. And as any Agile team, at the end of the sprint, they meet and do a retrospective. They collect ideas, what works, what doesn't work, things to improve. And it seems like most of the improvement ideas and the things that they get up, they are pointing in many different directions. And if they find something that they actually work on, they fix a problem, then it pops back up again, just like the whack-a-mole game. Have you tried that? They come up and you whack it down, and then it comes up back again. So stop collecting problems and start improving. Do you recognize this situation? Have you, when you do your retrospectives? Yeah? So I'm proposing something different. I'm supposed you're going to start with the Toyota Kara. But let's start with me. Who am I? Look at doing improvement work with the traditional way of thinking. We maybe do a big pre-study. We do a gap analysis, and we analyze, and we think quite a bit. And then we try to implement improvement, and then we are finished. The lean way of doing improvement is, yes, we do quite a bit of thinking, of course, and we try to analyze. We are very fact-based, but the most important part is to do. So you think, and then you try to do. And based on what really happens when you do, you collect feedback and what happened, and then you change your way of thinking so you can do another try at doing the improvement. And this goes on forever. It never was 2 years ago, and we wrote a book where I talk about standard work in software development. I'm a passionate road cyclist. Actually been out here on what you maybe can call a bicycle, but it was nice to go around and see the surroundings. I'm also very passionate about barbecue and gas grills. And there's a TV series in Sweden where a guy, he cooks lots of things all the time. And I'm happy to say I actually have the model bigger than him. But let's dive into the topic. And I really like this quote from Winston Churchill. To improve is to change, to be perfect is to change often. I think this really summarizes what lean and agile is really about. So if we look